Welcome to episode 59. I'm here with Vishal Gautam. He's like a brother to me. So, welcome to my show, Vishal.
Hi, Ivan. Thank you so much for inviting me to your show, and I'm very excited to get started. And it's
Amazing.
nice to see
Amazing.
you after a while. So yeah.
Yes, amazing. Can you let the listeners and our audience looking at our show today a little bit about yourself?
So I my name is Vishal Gautam, and I am 32 years old. I work as a software engineer in a company in London, United Kingdom. I've been programming for the last 4.5 years. I live in Montreal. It's a beautiful city. If you haven't visited, you should. It's a very nice city. I know Ivan since 2007. When I first came to Canada, Ivan was one of the first person I've came in contact with, and yeah, it's yeah. If you think about 2007, it's almost 16 years. So
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
so I've known you for 16 years. So it's a we go way back. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing. So, diving deep into memory lane, can you tell me a little bit about like growing up and how life was like for you?
Sure. Um, so growing up, so I grew up in a small. So my dad. So I'm originally from Bhutan. I came to Canada in 2007 with my family, but I grew up in Bhutan. I was there until I was 16 years old, but I never really stayed in one place since my dad was in the army. So we always traveled from one place to another. And growing up, it was always every 3, 4 years I would go to a new school. So it was difficult making new friends because you'd have to again leave them and then start all over again. But eventually I got used to it, and you get used to it. And the nice thing about traveling, staying in a temporary place for a little bit is that you get to make friends from all over the place. And yeah, when I first came to Canada, I had just finished my grade 10 in Bhutan, and Bhutan is a very poor country, so moving to Canada was a big culture shock for me. Um, Culture shock in a sense
Yeah.
that the education system was different. Just the whole life was just turned upside down, right? And
For the better?
yeah, I would say for the better. I mean, it's there's pros and cons,
Yeah.
and I think we have to, yeah, in if you look at if you look at all the factors, then there is a net positive, of course. you know I think Canada is such a beautiful country, and there's a lot of opportunities if you work hard. Um, and one of the challenges is, it's growing up. I did not have a lot of context uh what I wanted to
Pursue.
be. Yeah, like what goals I wanted to do. It was very difficult um because our education system is gives you very limited choices, right? And it's mostly class based, so you're sitting in a place and you're just listening to some random person. You're not really practicing and doing it by yourself, and that's how you learn. It's by doing and experimenting and failing, right? And school kind of discourages that. School discourages failing and kind of encourages you to just, be perfect. But, you know, when you're being perfect, you're being fragile because you're trying to achieve something, but nothing is perfect. Like everything
Yeah.
is changing all the time, right? There's always new information, so there's always new happening. And this idea of chasing perfection is flawed because no one can be perfect, right? Um,
And then that
Perfection.
causes like the fear of failing. Like, you have that innate
Yeah,
fear because you're
yeah,
so you want to be so perfect.
Yeah, the fear of failing, right? Why do like if we ask ourselves this question, why are we afraid of failure? Because our school system teaches us to be afraid of failure, right? Our teacher tells us, "Oh, you must not make any mistakes." Basically, you're saying you must not fail. But if you don't fail, then you're not learning anything, right?
Yeah,
There's this whole system of, it's just in our education system. It's just how we are. Um, it's it's like I said, it was very difficult for me to
yeah,
understand. I had to go through by myself through it, and it took me a long time to understand that, failure, the more number of failure is more related to your success. Because if you think about it, every failure is a decision making, right? That didn't
yeah,
go well. And so every time you have failed, it means that every time you have cut out that decision making. So you know for a fact that it's not going to work. So now
yeah,
you are basically eliminated, a lot of possibilities that could have worked, but it didn't work. So the more, and the nice thing about failure is that it teaches you a lot. Um, and it's incremental, right? So every time you
yeah.
fail at something and then you improve upon it and then you iterate, go back to your drawing board. But yeah, uh,
So how was the experience in Canada? Take us through that experience. Like finding that.
yeah. Um, so 2007, we landed in August, and then we stayed 1 year in North York in an apartment. And I went to a school there, Mark Garno, for 1 year. And I made few friends. Then we next year we moved to Mississauga to our house. Um, Growing up in Canada was different because um, this concept of 6 months winter was, or like, almost 6-ish months winter was a new thing to me. We did not have like crazy long summer hours, right? Like the sun sets here at 9, so that was new to me. Um, we had to wear school uniforms in Bhutan. That wasn't the case here, so you
Yeah,
could, and I really appreciated that because you're not imposed upon, someone is not imposing you to wear this particular dress. You are free to wear whatever you want. Um, and that is nice. And that was different. I think the education system is also a lot more different here than compared to Bhutan. In Bhutan, it's more exam based and and more test oriented. But here, the focus is on teamwork, assignments, and all this
yeah.
stuff.
You just need to understand the concept rather than memorizing stuff.
Yeah, yeah, understanding and communicating,
Yeah,
presenting, those kind of skills. And I feel like those kind of skills are, I'm very grateful that they taught me, because eventually it becomes so important to present new ideas, especially if you want to, if you have a new idea you want to present to the world. Being able to articulate what you want to say is so important. And I think those skills I developed when I was in high school in Mississauga, um, because in Bhutan you have this idea of presentation, but we don't have the technology, right?
yeah,
Like with this, not the presentation is not as, high tech. Like you have all these computers and you can put, and with the PowerPoint, it's not like that. Bhutan is a very old, very poor country, so we only have blackboards with chalks, and we don't even have heaters in the winter, right?
yeah.
The doors are open. It's so
I'm
so
interested to know, like, what
yeah.
kind of mindset did you have, like, growing up that limited your thinking?
Um, it was, you know, it was the limitation imposed upon my by my teachers, by my education system, or what what my parents knew, right? Like whatever I grew up, because I grew up in Bhutan. One of the limitation there was that, we did not have a lot of we did not have like having a computer in a school is a people usually you don't have computers in school, so we
Mm,
wrote using papers. So you know you were spending a lot of time on manual stuff which could have been automated using computer. So you are left to do more creative stuff. So one was the technology that kind of limited when I was in Bhutan. In Canada, one limiting factor was I didn't have any context. I didn't have any mentor
mm,
uh, who said, okay, you need to do this, this, this. It was just mostly using, whatever best resource I had at that time was career counseling or, Googling and, trying to find what answer I could find. However, because I didn't have a mentor, because having a mentor is it's a very important step if when you are working, because mentor kind of gives you this this framework, and they give you
yeah,
guidance when because they have walked through the same path as you did. So not having a mentor was a big hindrance to my growth, right? Because mentors really help you grow and give you this idea of you know um, when I think of growth, right? We talk about limitless,
yeah.
and the way how I think about it is that our brain is like a tree,
Okay.
like literally like a tree.
Okay.
The way how we take care of the tree is by giving it proper nutrients, whether it's nitrogen or phosphorus, or providing it with water. And if you go to forest, Ivan, right, the trees, the roots are all connected to each other.
Yeah.
So is a community is like a forest where the roots are all connected. We have the same beliefs. So growth comes from growing your roots, growing your brain, literally. And the way how you grow, I've been watching a lot of videos on neuroscience and it's
Neuroplasticity.
neuroplasticity. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very, very interesting. And there's a lot of information that is still, we still fall, our ideas are very powerful, but the
Yeah.
problem with ideas are some ideas become outdated or it becomes void because at that time they didn't have the right resource or whatever. But if people still cling on to that idea, that
Yeah.
idea, right? That's how you have all these belief systems that are horrible, right? People still believing in this horrible belief system. It doesn't have any logical meaning to it, but people still follow you to some reason, right?
Yeah.
Um,
You're getting
and
pulled to it.
and not being able to um, follow what's reality. And this fact, right? Like the fact that we know that our brain is plastic, meaning
Yeah.
our brain is always learning,
Yeah.
right? And it's always learning. Then they say, your brain stops learning when you're 24. That's not true. Your brain is always learning, right?
Yeah.
It's always needs to adapt. Yeah, if you are 36-year-old, if you go to a new country, you have to adapt to a new country.
Yeah.
Your brain is always learning. And the more you learn, right, the more you challenge your belief system, the more you experiment, um, the more you trial and error. That's how you grow. And at least for me, now when I'm working, I used to I do a lot of experiments to see if something works or not. If something doesn't work, it's okay. But I've learned at least something.
Yeah.
So next time I'm not repeating it. And the nature of my job is like that. You're building something and you're always experimenting with new ideas. Um, but when I was growing up, I didn't have these kind of framework to think like this because I mean, I didn't know right at that time.
No. Yeah.
It's 16 years ago. And these kind of things come with time and with practice. Um, but yeah.
So what attracted to you to that industry? Computer science, computer engineering.
Um, in 2016, I finished my undergrad degree in business.
Yeah.
And I started applying for work. And, you know, I wanted to just get a job, start earning money.
Yeah, that was my thing right now too. Just to have that routine. Yeah.
Yeah, that routine. And it's difficult because it doesn't matter what degree you have, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's about what value you can create to like whatever company you're getting hired at. So that's the most important part is what is your self-worth? Like what values are you willing to provide? In the beginning, because of again pressure, it's a old belief system again,
Yeah.
right? This idea that in order for you to succeed,
Get a
you have
job, go through
to,
this
you have
promotion, and you're all set for life.
yeah, and not even that, like go to university, get a
Yeah.
degree.
Yeah.
And but the market is always dynamic, right? It's always changing. I mean, the skills that was critical 20 years ago, it's probably obsolete, probably, like things are always now especially with the rise of chat GPT, a lot of people are wondering it's going to replace a lot of jobs. But the way how I like to think is that, you have to, these kind of technology kind of transforms you, makes you it makes you efficient, right?
Yeah.
In doing certain things. I mean, it's not going to change the whole world, and like,
No.
I mean, we are still like light years ahead from away from that kind of technology, having this idea of artificial general intelligence, which is probably not going to happen in our lifetime.
Yeah.
But what we have is, it's always improving, right? Technology is always improving. And how do you improve? Again, this goes back to this idea of experimentation, right? That's the only thing we have. I mean, if you look back in how industrial revolution happened in Europe, is because, there was a lot of invention, there was a lot of experimentation,
Yeah.
right? And that's how they were able to, invent engine, steam engine and all this stuff. Yeah. And um, but what got me into software engineering um, it was very hard for me to find a business related job.
Yeah.
And at that time I was just doing research. What field is the most lucrative or that pays the highest, and at that time money was one of my biggest reason
That
why I
was in
wanted.
the forefront. Yeah.
And it wasn't even the passion. I hated programming, to be honest. I even failed a course in university. It was a required course, and I failed horribly. And I tried repeating it, and then I just gave up in the middle of the semester. I'm like, it's not for me. Looking back to those papers, I find them so easy now. I'm like, I
Mm.
cannot. Now, that's the thing about looking back in life. Like all those things that you used to find hard, you don't find it hard anymore. And it's one of the measure of how far you have reached. But the problem is that you kind of forget the struggles. Now it kind of seems like it's like a
Ages ago. Yeah.
like no, it's like a slope, but it's not a slope, right? Like you didn't get there like this. It was like more
Yeah.
like
Roller
a
coaster.
like a roller coaster, yeah. And so yeah, basically wanted to you know get a job that is in get a job in a field that is in high demand. But it's very difficult because learning something is very, very difficult, especially if you don't have a lot of mentorship.
Yeah.
Because it was very lonely. All of my friends were working, and I was the only one who was saying, "Oh, what am I doing with my life?" Um, but one thing we forget is how much we can achieve in the long run.
Yeah.
And in the long run, we have expectations. We live in the age of social media where we are,
Instant gratification.
yeah, instant gratification, and it has a very negative effect on your expectations. You tend to think that you can become a programmer in 30 days or 90 days, but you cannot force learning. Anything, like if you want to do something that is meaningful, it requires, it requires time. and energy, right? And it requires constant repetition, right? Repeating the same thing over and over again. Because when you repeat more and more, you're kind of making it, you're making it implicit. Because eventually you will understand how things work. And when you have automated that doing, then you can focus on other things that
It
you weren't.
becomes habitual once
Yeah.
it becomes automatic.
Yeah. And eventually, you have these little skills that you have gathered, and then you kind of compose them, and then you try to build something more complex. But that's one way of looking at things,
Yeah,
right? Looking from a personal, like individual perspective. But if you look at Limitless, right?
yeah,
If you really want to maximize your brain, is by communicating, is by team working, because our brain, we are social animals, right? We need people. If you stay alone, we're gonna go crazy, right?
yeah,
We
for
need
sure.
we need, we need people. Uh, People, they give us, um, they give us they give us company. When we are with people, we share ideas, like we are sharing right
Yeah,
now,
yeah,
right? And we are, when we share ideas, we are sharing our thoughts and our, it's transferring. Now you have it in your brain,
yeah,
because and also our brain is like a time machine in a sense, right? Like the older you get, right, the more memory you accumulate, the more wisdom you accumulate, and over time you have this amazing ability to go back in time and see your life from the future, in a sense, the or
I love
or
that analogy.
yeah, actually there's a book called Your Brain is a Time Machine. You should check it out. It's a very interesting. There's also another book called 7.5 Lessons About the Brain. The reason why I'm talking about brain is, because I've been getting into AI lately, and
Okay.
and it's really interesting because there's a lot of intersection between the two. Even though AI is nowhere near close to our biological neurons, but it's interesting to just learn how our brain works and everything. And yeah, like our brain, it's amazing, because when you are, and I have a daughter, right? So
Yeah,
I have a 3.5 years old
yeah,
daughter, and when the pandemic happened, um, it's already hard to find her a daycare.
yeah,
So when the pandemic happened, we freaked out. We were like, how are we going to raise our daughter? Where are we going to send her? Because it's And then we decided researching. We looked at a lot of, we started, there were resources such as Montessori or Simon Pepa,
yeah,
who's also a very famous education, and they talk about our how children learn. And it's it's interesting because when you are born, right, you have so much neurons that you're just learning. You're a learning machine, and eventually your neurons kind of become more specialized
yeah,
to a certain task. But for you to grow your brain, is you have to gain new experience, um, talking to people, um, taking risk. And by taking risk, I'm not saying take a financial risk, just sell everything and go. No, I'm talking about trying something new, right? Just the smallest thing, like
yeah,
learning a new language, or um, trying a new food that you have never tried before.
yeah,
It's scary because you haven't tried it, so you don't know how
yeah.
it is.
You're out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, you're getting out of your comfort zone, but once you've tried it, at least, okay, this is how it is.
Yeah,
Um, and just the fact that you are trying means you are
growing.
trying to think differently.
Yeah,
Because if you think about how to think different is actually very easy. People think it's so hard. Like, there's videos how to think different. It's actually so different. It's so okay. Here's the trick. If you want to think different, is this: take something, right? Take something, anything, right? And 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 try to improve it, or try to find flaws, and you can find it in anything. Like if you use a software, right, then I'm pretty sure there's something that annoys you. I don't know what it is, but there's
Yeah.
something that you wish that it was, if there was like a simpler, and the problem is that you don't have the skill to do it, but that it's causing you discomfort in doing something, right? So the idea of thinking different is just having a different perspective, right? Like, um, that's one example. Or the other example is talking in a different language, right?
Yeah.
So if we speak right now in English, and if you start speaking in Nepali, it'll be different conversation, because
Yeah.
it's the linguist is different. Like it's a completely new environment, right?
Yeah.
Just by changing the language. So yeah. Um,
So to alliterate, what would you say your definition or being limitless means to you?
Being limitless means to me is you have to be limitless in your imagination, right? You have to play in your advantage, is that you have an amazing uh, thing called brain that can think, you can imagine, you can create, right? You have to think of yourself, how can you do, especially in a challenging time like these, where there's so many scary words like AI and so many things. It's scary, right? Like it's going to replace all these jobs, but you have to think about what makes you unique than those machines, right? We have the ability to reason. We have the ability to create new social reality. Even the reality that we are living right now was created by someone. Like the house that you're living on, it was created by someone, right? The mic that you're speaking on right now was created probably from China. They brought it here, right? Everything is a social reality.
Yeah.
And we have the capacity to create a new reality that we can, and what is a new reality? It's something, that people have been doing for hundreds of years. Before, we didn't have the same rights system. Women were not supposed, they're not allowed to vote, but people thought of a new reality, of a better future. So they fought for it, and they fought for this new reality. And um, for me, being limitless means challenging the status quo, pursuing truth, um, growing, and always learning about nature, um, trying to learn about the history, trying to learn about the world, how it actually works, um, try to uh, find, understand, create understand between different cultures, because we realize that we have more common than we actually realize. There are so many things that we have in common with. Being limitless to me means, um, taking advantage of the time that we have now to create something, or learn something, or teach someone. If you know something, share on the knowledge. Um, but
Definitely.
also, limitless means working with other people. So we are combining resources to create something even more complicated. So teamwork, and working in group, and communicate. Because as an individual, you can only do so many things, right? But if you want to achieve something great, then you have to have a great team. You have to have a support system, because they are the ones, when you're alone, it's tough, right? One day you
Yeah.
could be feeling amazing, but some other day you're just so tired. You're like, oh, I just want to sleep. But when you have a team, then they can pick up some of the work when you are, tired, or when you're not feeling well. Then your team kind of, helps you, motivates you, um, or they kind of help you. And sometimes they cannot do something, and also sometimes you work together, right? You solve something together. And Um, so in software engineering, we do a lot of pair programming. So pair programming is basically, trying to solve a problem using, two or more programmers. And and the nice thing about that is, we have two brains solving a single problem. So, uh, you know, the tasks could be divided. So one person is looking at the documentation and the other person is, trying to solve the code. So you're dividing the responsibilities rather than one person having to read all the documentation and then trying the code. So like the time, right? Now you're using the time that you could have, is saved basically. The person doesn't have to read the documentation because the other person is reading. And being productive is sort of limitless as well because you are you're solving more in a less amount of time. Um, but I think limitless is also relative, right? For example, if you are just beginning, right? So that's why I want to go back to this idea of tree mentality. When you are a small bud, right, you need to grow, you need a support system. But when you are a large tree, then you already have a support system, you already have a good network. So it depends on which stage you are, right? If you are a small bud, then you need a large network of trees around you, right? If you have a very good environment, because environment plays a big role. Environment plays a very big role in your, capacity to do anything. If you are in an environment where you're not in a supportive environment, then it's very hard for you to grow in that environment because it's always negative or there's
Yeah,
always something happening. But if you and having a positive environment is very important, especially having a positive role model, right? So it's not about just individual. It's there are some things that are beyond your control, right?
yeah.
That that you have to get out of. Um, so it's really about the environment as well as um, just your mindset of how you're learning or how you're growing. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vishal, for coming on and sharing your insight with us. It was great seeing you after a long time.
Oh no, thank you so much, Ivan. It's nice seeing you and yeah, it's lovely to, talk about these things because I'm learning a lot as well. So it's nice to share what I've learned.
Yeah,
And what you're doing is amazing as well, bringing in people and trying to share the
yeah.
ideas. And
Thank you
yeah,
for
thank you
listening to
again.
episode
Thank you so much.
59.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Having the
You too.
mindset to
Bye.
grow and learn with Vishal Gautam.